Hello and welcome to the Waynesburg Effect, the only political talk show on WCTV, and we're coming to you live from quarantine. As far as we know, this is the first Waynesburg University television station episode of any type being filmed post-coronavirus Waynesburg evacuation. As you guys know who are watching this video, on March 13th, Waynesburg University told all students that classes would be conducted online for the remainder of the semester. And because of that, we do not have access to our regular TV studios, and everybody is practicing social distancing. So it's a bit of a unique experience now as we are officially having our first Waynesburg Effect from our homes. I'm Mitch Montani. Dylan Cleland, Hreha, and Matt Mansfield are alongside for this first segment of the first quarantine episode of the Waynesburg Effect. Guys, this is going to be a little bit unique tonight, and we're basically just doing this on the fly. I'll start with this. How's everybody doing?
Pretty well so far. You know, it's been a little bit weird. It's weird adjusting to seeing everyone at their houses instead of sitting down in studio and kind of getting everything done. But I'm glad we're getting back on air and getting a few things done TV-wise for WCTV. But definitely been a weird adjustment the past couple of weeks trying to, practice social distancing, not being in school. But overall, I think I'm getting used to it, and I think a lot of people are starting to kind of get into a routine and kind of get used to post-coronavirus evacuation life.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Matt said. Mitch, thanks for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it. And I think the one thing that we're all finding out here as we go through this, we're about a week and a half into our classes being changed to online. And so now that part of it is kind of out of the way, and we can try to get back to some normalcy and provide some viewers with some content, whether it be coronavirus related or not. It's good to try to get back into that swing. And I think it's something that we'll definitely be able to explore over the final month of what the semester would be.
Drew?
Yeah, it's very strange. It's a lot different, obviously, being at home, and there's that whole dynamic, and then it's really like missing you guys and missing, the daily routines that we sort of take for granted. Have it removed that quickly and that swiftly has taken some time to adjust. But, we're back on air, which is good. My gecko Slime is making his television debut, so that's kind of nice. That's cool. That wouldn't happen in the studio. So, yeah, I'm ready to talk.
All right. So obviously, if you're watching this, you know that we're not going to be able to do the things we normally do. We also want to thank Zoom, because Zoom is what we're doing this over. So thank you to, I guess, our partners at Zoom for WCTV and helping us put this whole episode together. And that's how we'll presumably be doing things, at least at the Waynesburg Effect, for the next couple of weeks or however many episodes that we can get in. So we will have some technical difficulties. There will be no graphics. There will be none of the glamour that you typically see with a WCTV broadcast, but we're going to do the best we can, and that's all we can do for the time being. So I'll ask how this basically affects all of you guys. I know you all have significant roles with WCTV and a lot of elements within the Waynesburg University Department of Communication. Matt, you run the newscast. Obviously, the news is coronavirus, but things have to be a little different.
We're looking to get an episode going here soon. I feel like maybe after 2 weeks of everyone being in classes and everything, Melinda and I talked about it, and we said that that's probably whenever people get adjusted and get comfortable, we'll try and get things going from a newscast perspective. But obviously, like you, first Waynesburg Effect episode, first episode of anything CTV-wise, probably going to learn from each other. I know Dylan produces The Journey, so I feel like all three of us are going to learn from each other what we do right, what we do wrong show-wise. It's just going to be a very different process, and especially for the newscast, usually you're sitting right next to your anchors. You guys kind of have a little bit of banter, talking back and forth. That's not going to change, but it's going to be very different whenever you're sitting there with your anchor. And obviously, weather-wise, I don't know necessarily. Weather seems a little bit out the window right now because everyone's going to be in different locations, whereas we're all in Waynesburg. Typically, our weather guy could be out in Poughkeepsie, for all we know, doing weather from there. So it's going to be different along the lines of that. But overall, I think we're going to try and get a show going and then hopefully finish out the semester strong if we can.
Matt Mansfield from Canonsburg right now. Dylan Cleland is from the Penn Trafford area, so we're all coming to you from different locations tonight. Drew coming from Apollo. I'm coming from Bridgeville, so we're talking from all different locations and walks of life here on the Woo Effect tonight, which is not going to see the typical political talk we see on a normal basis, at least for this first segment. We'll have a second segment of this episode coming up. Dylan, I know you produced The Journey, have for a couple of years now. What's the effect you've seen, not only from the show you produce, but from a Waynesburg University community aspect and religious aspect? Just touch on whatever you want there.
Well, I think the common theme around the nation right now, in small pockets, whether you're seeing it on the Pittsburgh stations or what have you, you're seeing an opportunity for people to come together. And I think that's what The Journey can play in this role, help people come together, find ways where we can agree on some things, maybe use some inspirational quotes or messages, and use those to carry on with everyday life, even though many of us are quarantined inside the windows and confines of our house. Another aspect of that, the Waynesburg University campus ministry is continuing to do its work very well, and we're looking to possibly either assist them in some of that or continue to promote it as well. Chaplain Sumter is doing a fantastic job on Instagram and Twitter of getting out every Tuesday and Thursday. They've been putting out ministry and messages just as they would, a testimony as they would have at chapel on Tuesdays at 11. They're doing that Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 now. And so there's an opportunity to turn to God in this unique time and grow closer in your relationship with Him. But The Journey is going to try and help you come along with that. So we're looking to, as Matt said, with after this second week concludes of classes, pick something up and try to get some things put together, whether we reach out to local churches in Waynesburg and see what they're doing, or, as I mentioned, talk about campus ministry in Waynesburg, which has gone pretty much virtual now as well.
Drew, you attack things at Waynesburg University in both WCTV and with the Yellow Jacket, the future executive editor in the post-apocalyptic world of the Yellow Jacket. So what's your take on this whole thing?
So we did get confirmation today that we will be able to start reporting again, albeit remotely, but we will be producing content moving forward. So very much excited about that. That's another aspect of normalcy that we can add to, the lives of our staff and for our writers. So that's very good news. And basically for me, looking towards next year and, trying to implement some new things and set up things for next year, it's going to throw a wrench into things. I mean, we're going to have to do interviews most likely over something, like a high quality online meeting place like Zoom. And so that is going to be a little bit different. I've actually developed an app for the Yellow Jacket for next year. And we're working on testing that, making sure it runs smoothly, and then hopefully getting it on the App Store for next year. So that's something I'm very excited about, and something that, I've had more time to think about and sort of work on now that I'm at home. And really just looking at what we've done this year, we took an online first approach to this year. And so I've been sort of crunching the numbers on that through Google Analytics and seeing how our social media work has impacted the views on our stories and how that online approach has impacted how many eyes we're getting to our stories. And we made a significant stride this year, absolutely, in going sort of online first. And so I'm really interested to see how that's kind of affected by both the content that we put out, how that's going to be affected. And then moving into next year, hopefully we can continue to sort of build our online presence and keep raising those numbers, because it's been a fun year. And unfortunately, something like this happens and the year almost ends too soon. But it's good that we're able to continue to work and progress even through it.
I'll end this segment kind of on a lighter note, basically just by asking what you guys have been up to outside of basically doing schoolwork and taking online classes, because as we know, there's not many places to go. Restaurants are closed, at least in person. You have to order takeout in some locations. Some locations aren't closed at all, or closed fully, I should say. So what have you guys been doing to keep yourselves busy during these difficult times? I know I pulled out the Nintendo DS for the first time in a couple of years the other day. So basically just to check in as to how you guys are doing with the stay-at-home order in some counties as well during the COVID-19 epidemic.
I guess I'll start then. Well, I mean, I've been trying to become more cultured, watching a lot more TV, just trying to become I'll come back to Waynesburg next year and be a very cultured young man, because I've been spending a lot of time binge watching TV shows or movies that I haven't seen before. And then just trying to get outside a little bit, just every day trying to go outside, do something just so I feel like I'm, being productive. It's nice to go on a little walk, go on a run. The trails have been very busy recently, but the problem with that is, again, with social distancing, it's fine to go to the trails, but whenever they get so packed, there becomes a point where it's almost as if you're not practicing social distancing. So I've kind of cut out going to the trails just because a lot of people have been there to the point where I don't think it's really helping anything. It's the equivalent of going to a restaurant or a movie, sitting down, being near other people. So I think it's better off just kind of start avoiding those at this point. And then other than that, just adjusting to the online classes, getting the gist of what to do from home, how it's going to work. And obviously a lot of classes have been doing a lot of different platforms. So just kind of trying to figure out a daily routine and a schedule with how I'm going to handle each of the different platforms and how I'm going to organize getting work done and such.
Has anybody watched Tiger Eyes? Or is it Tiger King? I'm sorry, Tiger King.
I have one episode left. I might actually watch that tonight.
It is nuts. It is crazy.
I have not seen it. I have not watched.
Did you say you watched it, Drew?
No, I haven't seen it, but it's been blowing up on social media. I keep seeing stuff about it.
You should watch it.
I would be obsessed with it. Like you strike me as the person that would just absolutely love this show. It's worth the watch 100%.
And it's only 7 episodes, so it's a very watchable thing. You could pound it out in a day if you wanted to. It's very, very simple.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to look into it. I've been hearing good things. So.
Dylan, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy?
Well, first priority is obviously the schoolwork. And to be honest with you, it's been a little bit difficult to stay motivated to do it. I don't know if any of you would agree with that, but you don't have to physically get up and go anywhere for class. You could do it, in your bed. You could do it downstairs on your living room floor. I mean, you could do it pretty much anywhere. So I've been trying to establish a little bit of routine to get up, do my classes, and then maybe do some work right after that. Then the rest of the day has kind of been up in the air. If it's been nice outside, I've been pushing myself to really get outside, get that fresh air. Most days I want to, just because I'm tired of sitting inside. But like Matt said, you go for a walk, you got to be selective because there's trails. A lot of parks have been shut down too, municipal parks. We have a couple nice ones here in the Penn Trafford School District, and you can't go to those either. Or if you do, you have to social distance, and that's been difficult because everyone's looking to get outside. The one other thing that I've been doing, I have had a stack of books in my room that I've just seemed to collect. Sports books too, thing that I'm very interested in. A lot of broadcasting and career-based ones as well. So I've finally had a chance. I've read one, and I'm working on my second one now. So a little bit of reading as well, which seems to be something different. And there's nothing wrong with reading. I've never been a big proponent of it in the way that I haven't pushed myself to do it, but to finally be able to enjoy a couple books, it's been nice. It's been a change of pace. So I hope to continue that over the coming weeks as well.
Drew.
Yeah, so much like Dylan said, making that adjustment first was the big thing. It was a difficult adjustment, and we're starting to, get more used to it, so that's good. And then going off of what Matt said, trying to become, I guess, more cultured in his words. I've been listening to, a bunch of different types of music, kind of trying my hand at music production a little bit, which has been fun. It's been a bit of a different hobby that I've picked up. I've also picked up drawing. I have an example here. I made this little summer thing. I got like a boat shoe and a boat and a baseball. So
nice.
Yeah, so just trying different things and sort of trying to occupy the time, keep myself busy, and just trying to continue to sharpen those skills that we would be doing if we were at school. Unfortunately, we're not, but that doesn't mean it just stops. So
All right, so I just got the 10-minute warning from Zoom, so we're in a time right now where it's of the essence. So I got one more thing to do before this segment ends. We have Chris Hulse in on the call. Chris,
Hey guys.
how you doing?
Hey.
Number one,
Hey.
how's quarantine life down there in the state of Maryland?
It's definitely a little bit strange, especially now we're on complete lockdown as of yesterday. So if I go out, I get up to a year in prison. So
you're locked in your house pretty much.
pretty much I went out today trying to stay in shape because I know like if I just stay in my house for like a couple months, however long we're here, I'll gain 100 pounds. So I go for a run every morning, ran by a police car and decided it was time to turn around. It's not worth that year.
So Chris, there are no exceptions to that? Like, can you go out and get a loaf of bread or?
Yeah, you can go out and get food. You can go out and get medicine. Any sort of medical emergency, you can go out. But
So
other than that,
they're
no.
strict about it pretty much is what you're saying.
No. Governor Hogan is clamping down on people. I know there was a guy arrested yesterday because he had a little get-together with like a couple of his high school students, and there were like 12 of them, and he's already in prison.
Wow. Crazy stuff going on around the country. I wish all of you well. Please stay safe, and we'll talk to you hopefully on future episodes. We'll be back for segment 2 of the Waynesburg Effect coming up next. Hello and welcome to segment 2 of the Waynesburg Effect, and a very unique edition of the Waynesburg Effect. Coming to you live from quarantine, we have a full new group of so-called panelists for this segment. Jared Wiker is coming to us from Troy, PA. Mike Cappelli is coming to us from Canonsburg. Lachlan Loudon from Shaler, and Dakota Keefer from Brownsville. Guys, it's good to be with you. I hope you're all well. My first question is the same first question I asked to group number 1. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. Yeah, strange circumstances. My mom actually got tested for the coronavirus. I've told you over the last couple of days, but thankfully she tested negative, so we're glad about that. But still a little bit strange just being stuck in the house.
How about you other 3?
Yeah, pretty good. Basically been confined to my room for a while due to my own personal philosophies about trying to keep this thing contained. So haven't really left the house too much. Getting kind of stir crazy though. So it's good to have some interaction with some people.
Yeah, here in Shaler, Pittsburgh, and actually all of PA right now, we're under lockdown, so there's not much going on. But, we're getting a lot of delivery food, and we're also being just around each other more as a family. So I guess that's a good thing, and it can also get a little too much at times. But I'd say for the most part, there are some positives along with all of this, bad stuff that's going on. So I'd say we're doing fine here. No one's sick, so we're pushing through.
Jared, how's quarantine going for you?
Well, pretty smooth, I guess, as a whole, but I mean, it's pretty boring, as I think a couple of you mentioned. I mean, it's pretty much just online school and then play video games or find something to do, honestly. But, we're hanging in there. There's only like 3 cases near me, and I'm in Bradford County, like as you mentioned. So, I mean, I'm not very concerned about it. I haven't left house in, I don't know, like a week and a half, so.
So we were talking to Chris Hulse in segment number 1, and he talked about the restrictions that are going on in Maryland. As you guys know, he's from Maryland, and it's crazy there. They're not letting people leave their home except if there's some type of emergency or they need supplies, and they're much more strict, it seems like, in Maryland than they are in Pennsylvania. However, most counties, at least the one I'm in, and I think the one that Lachlan and Mike are each in, are under stay-at-home orders. I'm not sure about Jared or Dakota.
It's every county in Pennsylvania now. They announced it today.
Yeah, it's a statewide thing.
Stay-at-home order.
Okay, so we're now all under a stay-at-home order. That's official. My question to you guys is your thoughts on that. Is it helping? Is it necessary? I'm under the impression that with all that's going around, it seems like it is for the most part, these precautions. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I think it's necessary for sure. And I think if you look at other states that enacted on this early, like California, they have roughly 40 plus million people, but their cases are significantly lower than New York. Obviously, New York is crazy right now. And that's because immediately they ordered a stay-at-home order. My biggest thing with it, though, I watched Governor Wolf's presser today. I don't really know how enforced it's going to be because they said, well, they don't want people going to the grocery store every day. They would want you to do it like once a month or when necessary. But he didn't really act like it was going to be enforced. Now, I know it is a tough thing to enforce. You don't want to feel like you're infringing upon someone's rights, but at the same time, it might be necessary. I know just today, Pennsylvania had nearly 1,000 cases in 24 hours. So I think it's necessary, but I'm of the opinion it might not be enforced as much as it should be.
I agree with you, Dakota, because well, at least on the enforcement part, because we've had some relatively nice weather the last week or so, at least in Washington. And on my street, when the weather's nice, the kids that live on my street are outside playing like all day long. And while that's good and well, and they're out getting exercise, their kids aren't very hygienic. So I believe it'd be easily spread, especially through children. And there's some of the ones that are the most susceptible to it. So I think it isn't being enforced as harshly as maybe it should be. I've also seen a decent amount of traffic out on the roads, at least on my street, cars running in and out all day. So I don't think it's being enforced very harshly at all, at least on this side of the state.
Yeah, and over here, like, with our grocery store routine, we go once a week. Imagine, like, once a month with all of the hoarding and stockpiling that people have been doing, it's been incredibly hard for people to get their hands on sufficient groceries that could last them a month, like Mitch, you were saying. The fact that this could potentially be a once-a-month grocery store visit recommendation, that might not work out for some people. And like you guys are saying, with enforcing this is something that's going to be impossible to enforce. But the way that we have to look at it is there's only so much that the government can do in this kind of situation with telling people to stay home, because you can't jail people for being out on the street. Again, it's more of like you're spreading the virus, this is your fault. Going back to like being an individual thing, like this is something that you, for your health, you should be able to maintain yourself. You should be able to take these responsibilities. And with the grocery stores, that's an essential thing. You can't shut this down. No matter how much the government steps in this situation, you're going to need some sort of face-to-face interaction there. You can do as much as you can, but when it comes to that, there's not much that can be done, which is unfortunate, but it's up to us. It really is up to us coming together to stop this. So that's my take on this personally.
I think we got Jared Wiker back. We seem to have some type of small miscommunication with Jared, and his screen is very blurry right now. Let's see if we can get Jared back.
There he is.
He's back.
Jared, I know you have a more unique perspective because you come from more out east than any of us. So your thoughts on the whole thing coming from Troy, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, first, I apologize because my internet is just horrible, as you see. Like, that's like in my night classes, I lose connection sometimes. It's terrible. But, so I live in Bradford County, which is half an hour from the New York line, northeastern PA, about an hour northeast of Williamsport, which I'm sure you all know where that is. So, there's only that I'm aware of in the past couple of days that I know of only 3 cases in Bradford County. So, I mean, it's not really of an effect here where I'm at, but I mean, at the same time, we've still been, pretty much doing everything everybody else has. I haven't really been out of the house in a long time. So mom only really gone to the grocery store out of the house. She's been working from home. And, for the most part. So yeah, it hasn't really done much. But in terms of your other question from before, I would say the lockdown and stuff, it definitely helps, but it's unnecessary, and it very much restricts people's rights and infringes on them. I know it's a pandemic and we have some deaths, but as a whole, I mean, there's about 200,000 infected in the U.S. right now, and only about 5,000 deaths. So I mean, we've seen other things that have been worse, like the swine flu before. Even the flu has killed way more people. It kills way more people every year. So I think it's really bad that we're seeing all these lockdowns. I know we're trying to keep people from getting infected, but as a whole, it's not necessary.
So what's the judgment on Mike, you had something to say?
I was just going to say, Jared, you're very, very close. You said you're very, very close to the New York line, and New York is arguably the worst state right now in terms of these cases because of New York City.
Sure.
It's spreading like wildfire through there. So I would be, if I lived where you were, I would be a little bit more concerned just because of how close you are to a highly affected area.
Yeah, but that's also just New York City, which I'm still about 3.5 hours away from. And that's also because of so many homeless. I mean, there's so much, it's such a big city in general. I mean, if you think about New York and California, there's so many people and situations that just make it worse anyway, no matter what the pandemic is anywhere.
Yeah, and Jared, I noticed you brought up the swine flu. In comparison to this, the only reason that I feel like I should step in here is because I kind of understand what you're saying there, because I look at the numbers and I did the math a week ago, and it's probably different now, but it's like a 1/10,000th of a percentage of the United States currently has the coronavirus, which is such a small number. But what the virus has is, my one friend who's a science major tried explaining this to me. The coronavirus has a COVID-19. It has a very low virality rate, which sounds good, but that's actually bad, because what that means is it spreads so quick. You need less of the virus in you for it to actually work and kick in and, spread around your body. So this is extremely contagious, and there's no vaccine or no cure treatment for it. And the one thing that you look into hospitals in New York City, the biggest city, one of the biggest cities in the world that is overcoming this right now, are still trying to get through it. They're running out of hospital space because everyone who has this right now, that has it to that level of symptoms where they get tested and they figure out that they ended up actually having it, they're running out of respirators. They're running out of these expensive machines. They're running out of beds. They had to bring in the comfort and just house people on there and keep them. And they had to get refrigerated trucks to keep people in there. So I think what you're saying with being the swine flu is a little bit different, because this is requiring a lot more things. It's requiring more stuff. I know there's less people than something like the swine flu, but something like this, it requires a lot more stuff. And I think that's where this panic is coming from, because hospitals are starting to, in New York City, as we're seeing, starting to lose control. And like you said, New York is a huge city, and people are so close together. Like those houses and apartments, they're like right on, it's such a tightly confined space. Everyone's crammed in there. Everyone rides public transportation. It's going to happen. But I see what you're saying there. I just wanted to clarify, the difference is, in fact, because the virus is just so contagious and it's getting out of control there.
Well, and that's what makes it so tough, because I'm not denying the fact that it's very contagious and all of that, the health risk and stuff. But I'm just saying it's very interesting, because it's still ultimately affecting people's rights and violating them in the sense of governments, local and federal, cracking down on people. And that's my problem. I'm not denying the severity of the virus.
Well,
that's true.
Another thing, correlating back to the swine flu, it's very dangerous to compare this to the swine flu, because we've only tested roughly 1.5 million people. And of those 1.5 million people, already over 200,000 have been confirmed. We look back on the swine flu and see all the millions that were infected, but that's because we have all that data, because that was a decade ago, because they have the testing already confirmed, already done. The testing's not over here. I don't know if you remember. I mean, just 2 days ago, it was 2,000 deaths in the U.S. Now it's nearly 5,000. So the deaths are rapidly growing, and I'm of the opinion, I think it's a fact. I mean, they said about 100,000 to 240,000 people could die even with these parameters in place. And I think if you look at this swine flu, or the H1N1 as it's accurately called, there will be more deaths in probably about a week or two from this virus in the U.S. than the swine flu pandemic of 2009.
I want to recite a quote very quickly from Anthony Fauci, who's really been on the front lines of this whole epidemic. He's the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He's worked under 6 presidents. And this is what he said the other day in an interview I watched when it came to comparing this disease to the regular flu. He said, in some respects, it's similar to influenza, but in some respects, it's very different. It spreads very easily. You can even spread it when you're not symptomatic. It's insidious and treacherous. The other part about it is that we really don't see the difference from anything we've ever faced before. If you look at the mortality of the seasonal flu, the mortality is about 0.1%. That's a lot, and we get used to that. The mortality of this is about 10 times that. It's at least 1%. So he talked about how it's a lot more deadly than the regular flu, and it spreads a lot more quickly. And we've seen that so far. The swine flu had roughly 13 to 14,000 cases, I think, in the United States. 13 to 14,000 deaths, I should say, in the United States. Cases were up over 100,000.
And this is almost halfway there already. And they say that probably by late April, early May, a lot of the places are going to see the apex of this, which means that's when it's going to be the worst. So we're not even at the worst. I think they estimate by April 15th, there's going to be around 2,200 deaths in one day in the U.S. We didn't see that with the swine flu. We don't see that in general with any other kind of coronavirus because it can be misconstrued calling this a coronavirus. The coronavirus isn't the disease. It's types of diseases. COVID-19 is the actual technical term, and this is a different form of coronavirus than they've seen before. And that's another thing that Dr. Anthony Fauci, I've seen him say today. Originally, it was older people were more susceptible, and they still are. But he had a comment today that they're concerned with the amount of young people now that are starting to die from this. In fact, there was a 6-week-old that died. I forget what state it was today. And he said that it's something to do with the pathogens, and they're trying to figure out why you could be fine one day, all of a sudden you have pneumonia, and then you're on a respirator, and then you're dead, and you're perfectly healthy before that. So it's different. Just for example, just like when it originally came to the U.S., when it was in Washington State, that nursing home, roughly 30 to 40 people from that same nursing home died. You don't see that with a normal flu. That just doesn't happen. And it also has something to do with the fact that we not only don't have an immunity to it, we don't have a vaccine.
Well, what's also interesting, too, is that there's people that contract it but still remain relatively fine. Like Idris Elba, he's an actor in Hollywood. He contracted it, but he has remained relatively healthy. He's asymptomatic, I think is what they call it. But then you have other people that contract it, and they're legitimately on their deathbed because they contract this virus, and then right after that they get pneumonia, and then that's ultimately what ends up killing them. So it's very interesting the way how some people personally respond to it, like how their bodies respond versus other people. Because if you get it, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll move to the next question. Politicians have taken heat for this whole thing all across the board. The president has taken heat from all angles. His approval rating has gone up. That's something to also note. Tom Wolf has taken heat. Local officials have taken heat. The mayor of Pittsburgh has taken heat, Bill Peduto. And then if you look outside of the Pennsylvania area, you see people like Bill de Blasio taking heat. Andrew Cuomo has been praised for a lot of his handling, at least his press conferences and things like that. What's the take by you guys as to how politicians across the board have handled this crisis?
Yeah, I think altogether, from most of our leaders here, from President Trump to Tom Wolf, I think they're all taking as much proactive action as they can in a time like this. I know there is the heat coming in all directions, and this is such a dire situation here that heat is it's going to be inevitable. Presidents, leaders, governors, they're not always going to have the resources right now at hand and the right encouragement to give the right, and like they're not always going to have that with them to consistently give us what we need. They're adapting to this just as we are. It's hard. Andrew Cuomo has been doing a great job in New York right now. In my opinion, I think that President Trump has been doing what he can, and everyone coming together for the stimulus bill. I know this is something that is debated a little bit. I'm still not sure how I feel about it, but I do think that politicians, we're looking at Italy right now as kind of like what we don't want to be like. In Italy, they waited. We're trying to take proactive action here. So any action, I think, and as much as I want the government to stay out of my way, I think right now this is where we need them the most. I know, like Jared, you were talking about them violating rights. This is something where that might happen, and that's where it affects it's a little bit of a dilemma here. Do you want the government to step in here and tell you can't do things, or do you want them to sort of lock this down, because not everyone's going to listen, and the government almost needs to say something in a time like this. So I think our politicians here, at least in Allegheny County, moving on up, this proactive action to shut things down, I think it's necessary. As much as I don't like it, I think it's almost necessary, or else we're going to become like Italy, and their death rate, everything with them is out of control. And we should, we're trying to do things proactively. I think any action is all we need.
No, I disagree with you. It's not needed. The government crackdown that's been going on. There's been people that have taken too much criticism, and there's people that haven't gotten enough criticism, in my opinion. President Trump took too much criticism when people claimed that his travel ban to and from China was racist earlier, when several months ago, for no reason other than that it's President Trump did that. If any Democrat was in there, nobody would care. And
Republicans would care.
There's also the need for more criticism. I definitely despise that stimulus package bill. It's it's bogus, nothing important. It actually will end up doing us more harm than good. There's a lot of money going towards illegal immigrants, which I'm very scared of and skeptical. And in terms of crackdown, like I've been saying, I mean, there's no reason for the government to step into my life regardless. I don't care what the situation is. And this is just proof of that. And I will stand by that.
The government has a job to protect the public, and this is a public health crisis, Jared. I mean, they have to step in. This is what a government is for. More so than anything is to protect the public, and that's what they're trying to do. And I honestly am of the opinion that Trump's travel ban on China wasn't enough, because he had a travel ban on China, and he likes to praise that a lot now. But he didn't have a travel ban on Europe, and China didn't have a travel ban from their citizens going to Europe, who were then in turn coming to the United States, which is how this thing escalated and was able to come here the way that it did. So I don't think the China travel ban was enough. Now, with respect, I do think a lot of the people, a lot of the governors, and a lot of the administration is handling this the best that they possibly can. One thing that I think is incredibly dangerous, and it's a mindset that a lot of people have because of President Trump, is he's wishy-washy sometimes. 1 week, it's a dire situation. It's really serious. The next week, we're going to open the country back up in 2 weeks. Now, all of a sudden, after the April 15th or April 12th Easter goal, now 100,000 to 240,000 people are going to die even if we follow these measures. So they have a job, and this is their job to protect the public, and your rights may be infringed upon, but that's better than having my grandma die, That's just something you have to think about.
I think President Trump has received a fair amount of criticism because of certain actions or inactions that he took in the very beginning of this whole process. When he did issue the travel ban to Europe, he didn't clear anything with the United Nations, and that's sort of where my issue was with it. I think that there should have been travel restrictions, especially to Europe when Italy became the world leader in cases, but he didn't go through the proper channels. He just kind of did it, and in order to keep tensions down during this very tense time, it would have made sense to simply be like, I would like to restrict United States citizens from going to and fro any country in Europe, and also explain in more detail to the public what that means. Because what happened when he released that statement was that you had airports all over being flooded with people because he didn't explain the exact details. And what one of the details was that if you are trying to return home from Europe, you are allowed to do that. But people didn't know that, so they were panicking, spending obscene amounts of money on a last-second flight trying to get home so they could be with their family. So what I think could have been handled better was he could have released, or at least told the people what all the details in that travel ban were.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, actually, Mike. I think that the travel ban, though, is absolutely necessary. And I don't think
it is.
He did not need the UN's consent for that, though. I felt like that should be something that he should have had the right to do whenever. Like, it should have been almost just an instant thing, obviously with a little bit of a warning, but there could have been more details released. Yes. And again, there's a lot of stuff happening right now. The details for that could be a little foggy to come out. And I watched his Oval Office address, and I know that it seemed a little, I couldn't exactly tell everything that was going on. There is so much going on that he was talking about. Okay, now we're in a national emergency. All this stuff is happening, this, and then we're doing a travel ban. So I do agree with you on that there about the travel.
One of the biggest mess-ups, I think, with that travel ban was the fact that the UK wasn't included in it originally, and that's something just days later he had to go back on, and they were included because their cases at the time were running rampant. But for some reason, they weren't included. Then all of a sudden they were. And now if you look at them, they're one of the hardest hit countries. Even the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has the coronavirus now. And that's something that really, even when it was announced, I was confused why the UK wasn't included in that. I don't know why specifically, if it was a deal that they maybe had together. I don't know. It was very odd not to just include all of Europe. I don't know why specifically the UK wasn't included. And that's one of the things that I think is fair to criticize the president on. There are certain things I will give him credit on. He's tried to listen to doctors at times, but there are also times where he just sort of washes it away and pretends it's not as serious as it is, and then the next week it is, and that can be dangerous because the citizens of the United States, whether they should or not at times, listen to the president, and that could be dangerous for especially a lot of older Americans who were his primary vote getters.
I understand what you're saying there, Dakota, but I think what he's going for here is President Trump doesn't want to he wants to comfort people. That's what I would say his rationale is right now in this kind of time, which is why he's being so lax about this. I do think that he could, if he did want to scare people, he could, but I don't think that's what he wants to do. And part of that is because he doesn't want this to look bad on him or the country. Like, you can't blame him for that either. I mean, that's something you don't really want to criticize him for too much. Is he doesn't want this to just look bad for the country. He doesn't want us to be taking all of these, government restrictions. I mean, Trump is, as far as he technically is, he's not exactly a true conservative in some ways, but in the ways that he is, he does not want all this government stuff to happen, all this, restrictions and control right now. But that's probably why he's taking these steps back. And I think he does want to be more comforting, and he does not want this to seem like an issue, but it is. And, he doesn't want to scare people, but that might be what he has to do. And the criticism for that, I think, is coming from the argument that he is being not caring enough, instead of him being a little more just trying not to have chaos in a time like this with all the panic buying and everything. He doesn't want to make this even more chaotic. And that's what I'm seeing, at least.
All right, I'm going to jump in real quick. We were just given the 10-minute warning by Zoom, so we are officially running out of time. I'll just throw it to you guys. Your final thoughts, anything that you didn't say that you want to say before we wrap this up, and send things into the night for our first post-apocalyptic Waynesburg effect, I guess is the best way to put it.
I'll start. I just think whether you feel it's infringing upon your rights or not, it's not going to be solved by people continuing to go out into the world and trying to act like everything's normal. I think no matter what your thoughts are on the situation, I think we should just listen to doctors and health officials, stay inside, do your part, and just don't interact with as many people outside as you can. Obviously, if you live with people, you're going to interact with them, but do your parts, stay inside, distance yourself from large crowds. That way we can try to flatten the curve.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I know that it might not be ideal But please social distance as much as you possibly can. Stay out of the general public as much as you possibly can unless you really need to go. I'm of the opinion, even if these restrictions weren't in place, stay home, be smart, because that's the only way we're going to stop this spread. If you look at other countries that acted fast, Germany, they have one of the slowest spreads going on because they acted incredibly quick. And you look at Italy, and today that's something that Vice President Pence said we're on track with is Italy. That's kind of scary, but it doesn't have to be that way. If we stay home, protect your grandparents, protect your mom, dad, anyone that's older or susceptible to this, even yourself, because even healthy people have died from this. And I think it's important to take this seriously because it's different than anything we've really experienced in our lifetime. I've been talking to my parents. I've been talking to my grandparents. They've never experienced anything like this. And my grandma's 84 years old. So just take it as seriously as possible and stay away from people until the doctors say that our curve is slowing down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's ever worth sacrificing your rights for a little bit of security, as Ben Franklin once said as well. I'm going to reference that quote. I don't care if it's pandemic or not. It's never okay to do that. And I mean, sure, it's good to point out Germany slowing down because of their early crackdown, but at the same time, I mean, they just started the crackdown on people's rights as well. I'm not saying for people to go out. I do agree to self-quarantine and be smart, as you guys were saying, but at the same time, people's lives shouldn't be enforced by the government. I mean, there's even people, it's been talked about, people with New York license plates coming back through southern Pennsylvania will probably be stopped by police and questioned what they're doing. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. That's one small point of that. But continue on just in general, again, I mean, I do think we need to be smart as society and, you know, germs and stuff, you know, are real. I'm not denying any of that. And the severity of the virus, again, I'm going to repeat that. But at the same time, people's rights matter. And this is I think, almost a once-in-a-lifetime precedent that's going to set for the rest of our nation's history that people's rights were invaded.
Lachlan, your final thoughts, my friend.
So you might have noticed, you might have not. I've had a little bit of a cough here and there. I don't think I have it. I had a sinus infection the past week. That might be it. But you know, just my bit of advice to anyone watching and for you guys, the government can only do so much in this type of situation. And like Jared said, you know, our rights shouldn't be infringed upon to the point where we're literally locked in our houses, which is certainly something that could possibly happen if this gets farther and farther, if this just gets too out of control. I think the only thing that we can do is to stay in our houses and to just not social distance. Like you've heard it over and over again. I'm preaching to the choir here too, and I sound like a broken record, but that's the only thing that we can do in a time like this. And we just need to support our leaders in whatever they do. That is proactive action towards this. We need to be prepared to adapt to these type of situations. And we need to be willing to take what measures we can to stop this government controlling it or government staying out of the way. We need to be responsible for ourselves. And as much of a libertarian as I am, as much as I despise the government meddling into our affairs, I think this is very necessary for the government to do some sort of proactive action so we don't end up like Italy. And that's my final thought.
All right, guys, I want to thank you all very much for joining me. Mike Cappelli, Dakota Keefer, Jared Wiker, Lachlan Loudon. I want to thank the people that were involved in the show's first segment, along with myself, Mitch Montani, Drew Hreha, Chris Hall, still in Cleland, and one more, Matt Mansfield. That's it. A lot of people getting involved in tonight's episode. So I want to thank everybody who took part. I also want to thank all of the people who are eventually going to watch this episode, the first WCTV episode from any show that's being filmed after the COVID-19 evacuation from Waynesburg University, and now that all classes are online. So we no longer have access to the studio, so we're going to do the best we can in the days and weeks to come. Thanks again for joining us, and catch us next time on the Waynesburg Effect.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.